Hello and welcome to the Rad Dad Show, a podcast where we have intelligent conversations with successful dads. Today my guest on the show is Adam Lisagor. A couple of years ago, Adam took Silicon Valley by the storm when his company, Sandwich Video, started making advertising for the biggest names in Silicon Valley. Airbnb, Square, TrueCar, Flipboard. I guarantee you've seen at least some of his videos. Today Adam will share the secret of what it took to reinvent advertising and how he became the face of the startups in Silicon Valley. We'll also talk about his family and kids and how he's actually running a company where work-life balance is important. If you have young children or planning on starting a family, I highly encourage you to stick around to the end of this episode where Adam shares a story of how his first child put a bit of a pressure on the relationship between him and his partner and what it took for them to move forward as a happy and successful couple. By the way, if you hear noises during this episode, like trucks going by or people laughing or applause, that's because Adam and I are recording this episode outside of a conference hall in Portland, Oregon. The setting might be a bit unusual, but as always, you're going to hear fun stories, laugh and cry, and have a great time. Without further ado, Adam, welcome to the show. You know, I really wanted to chat with you because I remember a time in 2012 when I was in Silicon Valley and your videos just went viral. And everybody wanted to basically record with you. And I think it wasn't so much, it wasn't just about doing a really cool startup video. It was also about doing startup videos specifically with you. Uh-huh. Do you remember that? Or
sure, like the glory days?
The glory days?
Salad days? Because it was, there weren't a lot of companies doing it already, and I don't know, when you discover a certain space where you can excel and other people haven't quite excelled yet, then we definitely established a brand and like a reputation very quickly for being effective. Like I don't even need to qualify it further. We were just effective at doing this type of work where there was suddenly a lot of need for it. And so removing some of the friction between needing a video and getting a high quality video, Sandwich happened to be in the right place at the right time.
But how did it happen that you were the face of pretty much every successful startup in Silicon Valley?
Well, I wasn't, but because I did that spokesman role or the pitchman role for a significant number of these, then it just became recognizable. And it was only because I was really lucky and in the right place at the right time, and because the anecdote that I always love to share is that it was Jack Dorsey who made that decision for me. It wasn't me. It was when I went to go make the first pilot launch video for Square, and I thought I was going to sit Jack Dorsey down in front of the camera and have him talk about Square, and then he said, "No, I don't want to do it. I want you to do it." And then that just sent everything off in a different direction, because then my next handful of clients said, "We like the way you are in front of the camera because you're sort of this everyman, bearded, disheveled startup guy that represents a lot of our users." And it doesn't seem like... the subtext of it was that I was an on-camera pitch man, but I didn't seem like I was lying to anybody. And I think that's the biggest distinction between what I was doing and what people were accustomed to. And if you can ever subvert expectations like that, then you've created some value, I think, for yourself.
And correct me if this is wrong, but I remember all these videos, and I think even I was going through Y Combinator at the time, and I remember a conversation of people saying, "Oh yeah, this is the guy I want to do a video with." And I think part of it was going to be a great video, and the other part of it was you explaining somebody's product basically gave it that sticker of value, right? It just said, this product is going to succeed because you were doing that video.
Yeah.
Did it feel like that from your point of view?
It did feel like that in a probably a distorted way, because I wasn't I don't think that I had an ability to see in like successful products before they happened. I just happened to be in the luxurious position of getting approached by a lot of companies that were doing cool things, and other people have had, other like either incubators like YC or VCs had already pre-vetted for me and handed some capital to so that they could afford one of our videos. And so like the pre-selection process had already gone on quite a bit before they got to me. But it's why it made sense for me at some point to start looking into participating, in upside from making these videos financially.
What was the start of Sandwich like? How did you decide you're just going to go make videos for startups and then get Jack Dorsey as their first video?
No, it was a lot more organic and not planned than that. And it was exhilarating, honestly, because it happened sort of quickly, and it happened as a result of the internet allowing people like me without an audience to suddenly sort of gain this reputation and have an audience. And it's stories you hear from a lot of people here where we are at XOXO, is you have a voice, you develop some confidence using that voice, and suddenly you discover that there are people who want to hear you use that voice. And then if you're lucky, you discover that there are people who want to pay for, corporate interests who want to pay for you to use that voice. And that was exhilarating because it's all validating. It's all that any of us humans want is on this planet is love and to be loved. And that kind of validation is a suitable, in some ways, substitute for love, or a simulation of love. So where I had been on my sort of like journey as like, I don't know, as a person who wanted to do creative things for a living, but not having quite that validation, that can be really hard emotionally on a person to want to do something, to create things, to create things that make people want to respond and appreciate those things, essentially for the end goal of more love in your life, and not have that happen. And then, so it can be, you can experience sadness and depression and loneliness and all those things that come from not having that, like, achieved any of that that success that you envision for yourself. And then when it comes, hell yeah, it's the best thing in the world. It's the best thing in the world if it happens and you can control it, which is really hard. If you can control it, not let it eat you or not let it get ahead of itself, then it can be a really healthy thing to develop. And because it's been literally 10 years since that started, and I've been able to sort of like slowly and deliberately build this thing that I enjoy doing, I don't think that it's ever gotten the better of me.
One thing I've noticed here at XOXO, that people who've been successful publicly still have a lot of, a lot of insecurities, where you may think that everything is going great with them, but in reality, they're always questioning themselves.
They better. Yeah. Insecurity is universal. It's got to be. Especially, it's an ingredient, a key ingredient to making great things.
So you still feeling that on an occasional basis?
100%. Yeah. I mean, like I said, like you got to have it under control in order to sort of keep thriving. There are times where it feels like insecurity is going to get the better of you, and then you're going to be just like crushed under the weight of your own self-doubt. But you build those muscles and you build that strength to be able to sort of push through it no matter what those insecurities are telling you. But one thing that every person in the audience at a conference like this, every person out there watching the work on the internet needs to know is that all of the interesting people out there making anything that they find interesting are also experiencing those same insecurities as they are at home.
So how do you remind yourself that your public success is worth it and your insecurities should just go away? Or what do you do personally to deal with that? I find it fascinating, right? With so much success that you would still have sort of internal struggles with that success, and how you deal with that.
I think I understand. Like, how do you conquer that stuff, or just like keep it at bay so you can keep making? And
which
keep
one
doing?
is it?
Gosh, I think you just keep proper perspective, and there are times when, and this goes for any of us, if you make something and then you hear 100 people say that it's good, but you hear one person say that it's bad, you're going to let the weight of that one person overpower the 100 with positive feedback. I think that you learn strategies to not do that anymore. You learn to listen to that one person, but not let them take up so much space as they did before. So it's like little things like that. It's keeping proper perspective. It's not letting every negative experience you have with somebody who maybe has an idea different from your own. It's so funny because, like, I went to South by Southwest so many years ago, probably 2008 or 9, and a friend interviewed me sort of in a setting like this. We were outside at a cafe table talking about failure. And my position on failure at the time, and this makes me laugh so much, I'd made like 5 videos at that point, and I was already getting some recognition for them. And he said, "How do you deal with failure?" And I said, "I haven't failed. I haven't failed yet." And honestly, that was this arrogance. I thought I was hot shit, and I thought that I'd figured out a formula to not ever making something yet that was going to be displeasing or unsuccessful to the client, the audience, whatever. And then I learned very quickly thereafter that wasn't true, and it wasn't going to be true, and there's no way to not fail. And failure is part of success. It's just like part of growth. And when that happens, the first failures that come along feel devastating, absolutely devastating, proportionally to the body of work. Let's say I'd made 10 videos, and one of them was for Quora, Quora.com. And the client who I had approached, and I'd said, "I'm hot shit. I made the video for Square. I made the video for Flipboard. I made these Jawbone videos. Like, I'm hot shit, and you want to work with me?" And they said, "I guess. Sure. I guess. Cool." And then I said, "Here's my idea." And I made the video, and they didn't respond for 2 weeks. And then they responded and said, "Yeah, we don't like it. We're not going to use this." And that was devastating to me because proportionately it took up so much negative, space in my world. And over the course of 10 years, I've learned that kind of failure doesn't have to be so devastating. You can learn from those opportunities. It's okay to fail. It's okay to fail and correct course. I've had these amazing opportunities with a couple of my clients where we've actually gone out and made something for them, and it failed, and it was bad. And then they said, "You know what? Let's do this again." Like, what? What do you mean do this again? Like, are you serious? You want to put more resources into course correcting? They said, "Yeah." And we went out and made something great. And, like, the more you get used to, because ultimately what it is an existential threat. Mm-hmm. If failure at first is an existential threat, because what you think is, if I fail, I'm going to go away. All of this is going to go away. Nobody's going to love me. I'm going to cease to exist. I will die. And then you fail, and you still live, and people still love you, and everything is sort of okay, or you fix it. And when you see that happen a few times, it's a proof of concept that failure is actually going to be okay. And I think it's just like that kind of lesson, those life lessons that happen only by experience, that sort of, synthesize into like an ability to deal with insecurity, like I said.
So in a way, the highs of your success balance with the lows, and they teach you how to make each side better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's why if you rise too quickly, you don't get any evidence of the opposite of the lows. And then that can be devastating for a lot of people. I mean, and I'm not talking about like people who do what I do. mostly thinking of just like child actors or celebrities who like crash and burn.
Justin Bieber.
Yeah, like flying too close to the sun. I just feel like you always got to be grounded. I wish there was a way to institutionalize or formalize that lesson. Is just like keep your head down on earth,
Right.
I mean, that comes from parenting too.
Well, we'll get to parenting shortly, but another thing about Sandwich videos, and I think you as a person, right? Sandwich came out with videos that were different. Part of the reason they were so appealing, they were different. They weren't boring, but they were honest, right? And it was an honest review of an honestly good product, and that was very different from everything else that existed. It wasn't marketing. It was like the best marketing without any marketing, basically.
Right,
is that kind of who you are? How did you even thought of doing that as
it wasn't conscious, but it is honest, like you said. That's my favorite. I mean, what you just said is my favorite, recapitulation of what it is that we do. It's it's my favorite model of understanding what Sandwich is, which is not it's marketing without marketing. It's speaking honestly to the honestly good things, and it just happened. Or it happened because I think it happened as a function of like the generation that I came up in, growing up, knowing life before the internet and after the internet, knowing life sort of before DVDs and before DVDs and after DVDs, knowing life that was difficult and then easier in a media sense, in a media landscape sense, knowing what bullshit looks like and knowing what truth looks like, because it was always just so funny to me that people tasked with selling things to me as a kid were not kids, that they were adults who thought they knew how to talk to kids. And I think a lot of my generation became wise to that earlier than ever before, because I came of age in a generation where you would suddenly see blockbuster movies that were targeted towards kids, towards teens or whatever, and teenage culture was suddenly prioritized because of its business opportunity, but it became a central focus of a lot of like pop culture was how do we speak to young people so that we can like sort of get the most value from them, but also like seeing that in the attempts to do that they were doing it wrong, and then recognizing those things that were wrong and then trying to figure out how to do them right. So advertising to my generation always felt and looked and sounded and smelled like advertising. So it just seemed like a fun opportunity to do advertising that didn't feel like that.
Like, yeah, you were at the right place in the right time with the really right concept, right?
Yes.
And it worked out really
just
good.
Just 100% luck all the way across.
I think we should talk about this and how the world is changing. So, your kids and my kids grow up, they're going to be able to make videos for people of their age, right? There's no reason an 8-year-old can't make something for other 8-year-olds anymore.
Without any barrier, right? Without any...
just pull out a phone and just do it and see where it goes. But let's pivot a little bit and quickly talk about you becoming a dad and how it was like to be should we call Sandwich a startup? Because
sure.
Is it entirely owned by you?
Yeah.
It's the best kind of startup.
No outside money. Yeah.
But you went from just yourself to now 17 people. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of payroll to cover, and
and it was helpful that it went in that direction of like feeling responsible for the livelihoods of a couple of people first, and then going into being a parent. I feel like it was an interesting way of preparing for that idea of that responsibility.
Right. How old are your kids right now?
My son is 5 years old, 5.5. My daughter is turning 2 next week.
2, nice. Yeah. That's a good time apart.
3.5 years. It's a nice spread.
It's when you start to sleep again and you feel like, wow, my first kid is really good. I should have another kid. And then you have another kid. You're like, oh, what was I thinking?
What did I do? Yeah. Exactly. It's hard all over again in different ways.
how hard was it, being a startup founder and having kids?
I think being a founder and a parent wasn't as hard to do because I always prioritized work-life balance in my company no matter what. Because I just wasn't ever somebody who was willing to do that amount of sacrifice, put that amount of sacrifice into my vocation. I did in my 20s while I was learning everything, and there was nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes working 6 or 7 days a week and not leaving the office until 11 or 12 was just something that you do because you need to prove to yourself that you can do it the best. You need to show that that you care enough. Like it's just useful to spend your 20s putting in that amount of care. And then by the time that I was able to start my own company, I knew what that experience was like. Bootstrapping and getting off the ground, I certainly put in those hours, but it was I took the risk and I got the reward. And then when it got to a certain point where it was not self-sustaining that I didn't have to do anymore, but it didn't feel like it was going to go away anytime soon, then I figured out how to ease off the gas pedal a little bit and not have to work weekends and let some of the other people around me do some of the heavy lifting as well, to the point that it sort of worked out perfectly when my partner and I were ready to have kids. It was at the right time because we had a comfortable income. I knew that I wasn't going to be working so hard that I wouldn't be a part of the journey of raising our kids, and that I could sort of balance each. Whether it was balanced successfully, that's up. I would have to have my partner weigh in on that too, because I certainly think it wasn't. When my son was born, I had decided I was going to take 4 weeks of paternity leave off of work, but I had just shot 3 commercials for Igloo, and I apologize, I have a little congestion, but I had just shot these 3 commercials for Igloo. They needed to be edited, so I brought my work computer home during my paternity leave, and there's a picture of me at the time, because actually Macworld came and took a picture and did a little article about me, and I just looked like hell. I looked like I was new dad, and I was sitting in front of my work computer, and it's just all of the memories of my first month as a dad are tied to sitting there at my work computer instead of being attentive to my newborn. And that was a big mistake. I should not have brought my work computer home.
Did you fix it the second time around?
Yes, I did. By the second time around, I had the right pipeline in place so that I wouldn't have to have done that anymore.
It's interesting, right? Because you recognize the fact that you wanted to be there with the first kid, and that you fixed it, and that's the right thing to do, and it's a good thing to do, and yet you make videos for companies in Silicon Valley where in today's world it's all about working 80 hours a day for no pay so that maybe one day you can get some kind of reward.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I hope people listen to you and say, well, this guy is successful and this guy is making my videos, right, so that I could be successful. But he didn't get to be successful by just not living. Adam's got life too. And,
I don't know. You want to. I'm not very predetermined about anything I do. I don't set a goal and then achieve that goal. I think I just course correct very quickly along the way. So it feels like I'm getting burned out in one capacity, then I'll ease off and I'll just try to make it better. Not try to fix it, but just try to make it better. Make those little decisions in life that we all make. Oh, I've got heartburn. Maybe next time I won't eat the spicy thing. Those little decisions that don't have to be about using an app to track all of your intake or anything like that. That's more my style of living. Is try to be very, very aware and mindful of what is feeling wrong in your life, and then be inventive with how you make those feel not wrong anymore.
Is this how you run your business projects too?
Yeah, absolutely.
super valuable lesson. And especially, in a way, once again, you're doing what the startups are always striving to do, the whole, ship quickly and iterate. That's exactly what you're doing, even though you're not even doing software in your business. That's amazing.
Right.
And, yeah.
Well, I've always wondered whether there were systems that could be put in place. And you got to do the basics, like make sure that you bring in the right people and not the wrong people, and that you make sure that all the basic needs are provided for to make those people thrive and, make everybody feel safe and able to do their best work. But beyond that, I never figured out how to systematize what it is we do. So the only alternative is to be very quick to react and respond to anything that feels like it might be an issue that comes up. And my team is very attuned to that as well. I think that they know that that's how our company culture works. And so they also embody that idea. And that's how we communicate with each other, is let's do what we know how to do as we've done it before. And if anything special comes up, which it always does, then we figure out how to deal with it. And we don't try to, we're never so I would call it arrogant to think that we can see the problems, way before they happen. We try to get ahead of things that we think might be, that's responsible. When we shoot a commercial and we rent a location for thousands of dollars that may be a nice house in LA, you see the problems happen before they happen, and so you hire a company called MatMed to come in and lay down floorboards and protect all the walls. And there's a company that we use all the time, and that's all they do is they show up to set early on the shoot day, and a number of burly guys come out and they just spend a couple of hours rolling out all the protective stuff. And why do we do that? Well, it saves us from all the problems that happen later on. I remember not doing that early on because we couldn't afford it, quote unquote. We couldn't afford to do this kind of preemptive protection. But invariably, every third shoot, some grip would drop something and it would damage the floor that then cost thousands of dollars to repair, which would then, insurance would cover, but it would affect our premiums and that stuff. And you learn to take the precautionary measures just like you do. Sorry to keep looping it back to parenting, but parenting is seeing those issues happen before they happen so you can protect your child, so you can give them the best path forward.
Well, that's the topic in itself, because you could be protecting them from everything, but then at some point you have to let them go, and you have to make them.
And then you react in the near term, right? Then you react quickly. Oh no!
Yeah.
Yes, I want my son to climb that tree. I'm not going to tell my son not to climb that tree. But oh shit! It looks like he's going to fall and he might break himself. So I'm going to go over there quickly to see how I can mitigate that.
Yeah. Just for people who might be interested in the whole video production aspect, can you tell me more about your process? What's included in your commercial? Where does it start, and how long does it take? Good question.
Sorry, so I'll say it again. Good question. I kind of pulled on the cord, and so it might have affected the... So it always starts with ideas. It starts with getting on the phone with our client. Most of our clients are not in LA, actually, so it's fun sometimes when we sit down in person and we go over things, but almost 99% of our client interactions are remote. And so we get on the phone with them, we talk through everything. Often they'll give us a brief that says the basics of everything they want to say. And then we break away and we decide how we want to accomplish whatever the goals are. And sometimes we lay out those goals ourselves. Sometimes they tell us what the goals are. But there's some amount of strategy involved. It's really just sitting and thinking about, what is this product? What does it mean to people? Wherein lies the value? And then we put our storytelling hats on and say, okay, so how do we convey this with some sort of a linear story that effectively communicates the values of this product or this experience? And then we we usually write a few ideas. We put them into some sort of a presentation, and we is that better?
Yeah.
We put them into some sort of a presentation, like a pitch deck or something. Sometimes we present them live. Sometimes we just send them along to our clients to respond to. But then our clients hopefully get a good sense of what we're thinking and how we formed the model for what it is, the method that we want to tell the story. And hopefully, if we've done it well, if we've communicated those ideas well, which is, central to our purpose as a company, they believe that it will be effective and successful. They will get some sense of how it will look and feel, and then they'll sign off on it and allow us to move forward. And moving forward means that we start putting all the pieces in place to actually execute the production. And that means getting all the people involved, crewing up, going out and finding the best DP for the job, a production designer and wardrobe and hair and makeup and the talent, the actors, the locations, all this stuff that goes into just the traditional methods of making commercials or production, which are actually quite fun. You see, that's why I went to film schools, to learn about all that stuff. That's why people go and learn about how movies are made, because the nuts and bolts is really fun to do. It feels like playtime. So then we go off and do that. We shoot. We have 3 in-house directors, myself included. The other 2 are here with me in Portland. We have a number of outside directors that we work with over and over again. And it's all about bringing in the best people for the job. And then we go and we shoot. And then right away we go into post-production. We have a post facility in Sandwich in the company. And we edit. And that process you call the offline edit, which means rough cuts and everything. And it's going to look messy, no color, no sound mix. It's just it's edited, but it still looks and feels a little bit raw. And then we get the client to approve that and lock the cut, and then we move into the online edit, which means putting the proper color and finish and music and sound mix and all that. And then we end up with however many quote unquote deliverables that we've been scoped out to produce, meaning a 30-second commercial and then maybe a 15-second cut down of it, or a longer version, whatever the client needs, whatever they're gonna be able to make best use of. Sometimes they go out and put it on, broadcast TV. Sometimes it's just for digital. But that is basically the process.
Well, that's fascinatingly long for a commercial, right?
Yeah.
And did you do it all by yourself when you just started, when you were the face of Sandwich? And
yes and no. I didn't have any employees, so I was definitely doing arranging the money with the clients. I was definitely writing the script. I was definitely bringing in the people to help shoot, which was a revelation in itself, because I shot the first couple by myself, and then as soon as I had a little bit of money that I figured out I could actually go and pay somebody to help shoot. I got in contact with a cinematographer who I'd gone to NYU with, and for those first handful of jobs, she came in and she shot these projects with me, and gotta love it. It's real life.
yeah. I mean, that's why we're doing it outdoors. It's juicy.
It's juicy.
Yeah.
It's raw. Anyway, so she, it was a revelation to me, because I discovered that if you bring in somebody to do something that you don't know how to do, and they're really, really good at it, it can just elevate your whole game. It can make it so much more valuable. It turns out that person who I'd brought in to shoot those first few commercials with me, and then subsequently probably 20 more. She shot the movie Black Panther, and she was the first woman nominated for the Oscar for cinematography.
She just never told you when you started. So
she was just this exceptionally kind and generous person who became a close friend. And she was her attitude was always. Her name was Rachel Morrison. Her attitude was always, yeah, whatever it is, I just love to shoot, so let's go and make it happen. And even if it was like very little money, she was always down to make something great. And if I can use that as like a teachable moment, that is her talent plus that generosity as an artist is absolutely why she is so successful, because she wanted to work and she wanted to do the work. And I'm like, she's famous now for like operating a camera while
with the baby?
9 months pregnant. 9 months pregnant. You know, she just had her second child a couple weeks ago, but she's working up until the day she delivers, and because she wants to be working. And finding like that was just like such an early fortuitous lesson that I got, was that you can find people out there who are world class, and if you can somehow convince them that your mission is worth following, if you're worth working with, then they're going to make your work so much more valuable, and that everything gets easier from there on.
No, it's a great lesson, and her and you and a lot of successful people, I think if you kind of average everyone, they're never arrogant or, a-holes. People are just usually kind, hardworking, and really excited about what they do, and that's the people you really want to work with the most, and that's what propels your success forward. And
it's interesting that in some ways I feel like this conference we're at, is it okay to talk about the conference?
Cool. Yeah,
we're at XOXO, which has been started in 2012, I think, 2013. I feel like it was formed around that idea that be nice to each other is important to doing good creative work, which South by Southwest had definitely gotten away from that idea of like that important key ingredient of like being nice to each other, just the very idea that they were sort of vetting people who came to this festival based on the pre-qualification that they are nice people, that they're doing something that's good for the world and not bad for the world, and then bringing together under that pretext. Was very unique to this conference as a movement, and it feels like we're at that time. It's a fractured time in history, but we're at the time where it's like almost like a line in the sand. There are people who are interested in doing good for the world, while making money, while doing commercial stuff, but also just like the primary importance of being good.
Right, and it's like a new wave of artisan business, right? Where people are, you don't have to be making product with your hands, but you're making it in the same way like craftsmen used to make it before, with care, and you're like,
with a focus on, like you said, care, and a focus on humanity. And I don't know, it seems like before, certainly in the entertainment industry, it wasn't so focused on that, on the humanity side of things.
Well, it's people like you who are making it a comeback or, a new wave, right? And you can build, give it 5-10 years, you're going to be in Hollywood making a remake of Jurassic Park. Just kidding.
Well, and who knows why we got there now, but I have a feeling it has something to do with generationally being brought up with, a different emotional intelligence, being raised to sort of like think about how does the other person feel when you hit them or whatever, like our parents thought about that stuff in ways that their parents hadn't thought about it. And so just like the importance of that awareness of others, I think in very small ways over time, just like pebbles, culminated in caring about each other.
So this is excellent. So tell me, what do you think about differently that your parents either didn't think about or had a completely different opinion about as far as life and parenting and where you're going to go in the future and how you're going to educate and inspire your kids, for example?
Yeah, I think it mostly has to do with your kids feeling like they have agency in life, because I don't think that was a priority before. That kids are independent independent thinkers, and their ideas matter. And like I don't know the best way to formulate these ideas really, but I just get a sense that when my mom and dad were brought up, it was not highly encouraged to be free thinkers and independent thinkers and like weigh in on decisions with the family or be prioritized as people in that way. And I don't necessarily think that when my mom and dad brought me and my sister up, that they were necessarily like deferring to us for our opinions on everything, but they certainly made us feel like we were important enough and had a voice to be somewhat like some greater percentage empowered as a presence in the family. And I think that just that trend of like being respectful of the fact that our children are capable of thought, and that these early decisions that we make on their behalf are going to culminate in like who they end up as people. And I don't know. I think it's just a different type of prioritizing, and God, it's such a complicated and multi-layered question. It's about privilege and what goes into the making of a human, and nature versus nurture, and like how do you prepare your child for the best. How do you put them on the best path forward, and how much is too much and how much is not enough, and all this stuff. And the parenting style that my partner and I have landed on is a little bit more laissez-faire than I think most of the parents around us. It's a little bit more casual. Certainly it's more casual than my upbringing. Mm-hmm. In terms of the involvement of like the regimented structure of upbringing. I think my upbringing was a lot more regimented than my children's, but I am now coming to find out that that's okay. Like it's not going to all blow up if like their bedtime moves around a little bit, or they don't, whatever.
I'm curious too. You went to, was it NYU for film school, right?
Yes.
And then you ended up with a company of your own. How are you going to teach your kids, or what kind of path are you going to inspire them to move towards as they grow up?
Yeah, I think that they can make stuff that can be valuable to them and to other people. My son is just becoming aware that there are people who make movies, which is very exciting to me. I took him to see The Incredibles 2, and because there was a little featurette before the movie where it shows like the voice actors like in the studio, like we're doing right now, and it shows some people drawing pictures on the computer that go into making an animated movie. He started connecting the dots a little bit, that these movies don't exist of their own, their own volition, that animated movies don't exist in an animated world. It's because people in our world made them and animated them. He's becoming aware of that, and the first thing he said when we left the theater was, I want to make an Incredibles movie. Like, he wants to do that because he draws pictures all day long. But suddenly, the act of him drawing, the act of him like illustrating the world that he imagines and creating these little images can now mean something different to him. And I think that like you can do it in a very soft and loose way to encourage your child to appreciate that the things around them that have been made with intention. You know what I mean? That like parks don't just exist because they're parks. They didn't grow this way when the earth came to be. Like, people planted that tree, people made that decision. Like, everything around you was decided with intention by somebody. So, you know what? You can be a part of that decision making, and how cool is that? That is not it's like a hugely powerful idea, but it's such an easy idea to convey. I just think that's so cool. And part of it is by virtue of the tools that we have around us now that allow them to do that, like, which is incredible to me.
Do you and your partner actually actively encourage it, or it just happens naturally because you're so laid back and you let them explore?
Yeah, it happens pretty naturally. My son, we didn't decide for him that he was going to be drawing a lot of pictures every day. He just kind of like, he found a blank piece of paper and a marker and he started drawing, and then he found another piece of paper, and then we started buying him reams of paper and markers to draw and draw and draw all the time. And I think that's the best way of letting things happen. You can sort of like, all you can do is expose them to different things and see what they respond to, right? Like I thought my son was going to be a musician. If you can't force them to take music lessons, you can't force them to love an instrument, but you can let them know that a musical instrument exists and see whether they have any interest in touching it and making sound with it. My son asked me to take him to the accordion store the other day because he's really into pirates lately. And why the accordion? But because he saw a pirate playing an accordion song, I think, somewhere. So he asked if we could go to the accordion store. We went to Guitar Center. They don't have accordions at Guitar Center, but I found an accordion store in Glendale called Dave's Accordion. We went there last week, and the nice old lady sat down with him and showed him how the accordion works. And for whatever reason, he sat there, and I've seen him dick around with musical instruments before, and it's just like a child. It's just like he's not very interested. But seeing him strapped into the accordion and making it, I don't know what it's called. It's like a billows. But making it work and making sound come out of it, he felt like a grown-up boy for the first time in my eyes. It was such a beautiful thing. And so what am I going to do now? Yeah, I'm going to encourage him by going on Amazon and buying a $20 toy accordion so that he can continue to experiment. You don't want to overindulge that kind of curiosity, and just because that's got its own set of problems, right? Of giving your kids too much, and then they don't. What's the old adage is that they don't appreciate anything if you give them everything. So it's always balance, right?
Do you see your parenting style change from the first kid to the second?
Yes, definitely. And it's actually tricky. If I could cop to something, the first couple of years are very hard for me. I don't know if this is common with fathers. Mm-hmm. And I'll throw this question to you if you can weigh in. But not forming the bond with your child in the first couple of years before they really start using language. That the mother forms with them. It's the mother. My partner formed that maternal bond instantly, of course, and she can offer them so much more, and they understand each other so much more with both kids. And now that my son is maturing to a certain age and not letting his emotions overtake every interaction, we're really forming a bond which is incredible to me. This is the stuff of parenting. This is the most important stuff, where I feel like we're two humans kind of coexisting together, rather than a human and a lump of clay, So I think that has been consistent with both my kids. And my daughter, who's almost 2, she's not really stringing words together yet. She says words, but we're, not conveying much meaning yet. And so I feel like that's just that milestone to reach before I really form that special bond with her. And then I start becoming that much more engaged in our relationship. Whether that's controversial to say out loud, I don't actually know. What do you think?
I don't think it's controversial, and I actually heard more dads feel that way. In fact, I'll link to the episode in show notes, but I have an episode with Alexei who talks about it in depth and how he was basically depressed for 2 years because he was expected to play with a child who he didn't really understand. And in fact, yes, as soon as his kids started to talk back, it closed the feedback loop where all of a sudden he realized, oh, wow, like everything we've done actually internalized in that human, and now it's coming back at us.
Yeah.
But it's, I guess it's maybe something people should really know ahead of time that it could happen. For 2 years, you might feel like, well, there's no feedback from this child. But personally, I think it helped to spend more time with my kids, and they may not be talking to you, but you can recognize a lot of things that happens to them. Just as a short example, we went camping for 3 weeks with kids. They're 3 and 1, and had a blast. We're outdoors most of the time, and we came home. The first day at home, playing at home, my 1-year-old, she can't talk, but she looks at me and she just points at the door. You know how the monkey at Family Guy points at stuff? That was that kind of like, ugh!
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, of course, she just wants to go play outside. Yeah. So basically spending time with your kids, you start to pick up certain signals like that, and I think that helps. But what you're saying is definitely not uncommon. It's just we're still in a society where it's not, it's totally okay, but people feel like it's not okay to talk about these things. Yeah. And, in fact, I think if we knew everything there is to know about parenting, you'd think twice about having your first child.
Yeah.
It's... right, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's incredibly time consuming. It's challenging, at least for the first year, because you're not sleeping. It's like you're aggravated. You probably eat too much and gain weight, and all sorts of things change. Everything about your life changes. So you also have to know that going in. But I think everything you've felt is definitely common, but not spoken about.
Well, that's great to hear. And the other issue that creates of that, the sort of the imbalance or the lack of feedback, is that your partner often has that feedback loop, that closed loop, right, where they do know how to interpret the needs of the child and provide for those needs in a way that I don't. So that creates a whole sort of other dynamic of resentment between you and your partner. And that's the thing that, whenever I talk to dads to be or new dads is the sort of the insight that I can give them, if possible, is share my experience where if you don't kind of get ahead of it with your partner, it can really wreak havoc on your partnership. It can really just set it off in a different direction, a negative direction that you weren't expecting. What I try to tell new dads or dads to be is to really think differently about their relationship with their partner and make sure to make it a priority. And make sure to make it a priority to stay connected with them. And even if that means trying to recapture some of that thing that goes away first, which is the time that you spend in each other's company, just focusing on each other. When you have a child, all that goes away very suddenly. And if you don't have that time carved out for each other where you just together and appreciating each other and listening to each other, then your relationship is going to change very quickly for the worse. I think that it happens pretty consistently in relationships with I don't know. I might be incorrect. It certainly happened in my relationship with both of our kids, to the point that, when we were pregnant, when my partner was pregnant when we were expecting our second child, we knew enough about the first time around that if we did it again, we might not make it through it, the rough patch of the first year or 2 years. So we sort of did some work on ourselves and each together to try to prepare for it, and I'm so glad we did. We learned tools to listen to each other and understand each other a little bit differently. But and we're not people who had ever been through this kind of work before. Just to give you an idea of the extent to which the first child kind of inflicted harm on our couplehood. So I think date night is so important. Just going out to dinner, find a sitter, if possible, and spending time with each other and figuring out how to connect with each other and communicate the way you used to as a couple is so important. It's going to make everything better, because ultimately you're there together to provide for your child or your children. If that goes away, then that, if your couplehood goes away, then you're not able to necessarily do that in the same way for your child, or it gets harder.
Just talk a bit more about the tools that you use to connect with each other, and also how you approach that conversation to begin with, because it's probably very difficult, and maybe more so for a lot of dads than moms, but I think it's also easy to assume that one of the partners has problems or, wants to talk about something, but in reality, both people really want to share something, but how do you connect that?
It's really learning how to listen to each other, but also just appreciating that it's going to happen, it's more than likely that you're going to resent each other for things that you didn't know you were doing. Your partner might, if you're a dad, your partner might resent you for not being as present in the child rearing as they are. Mm-hmm. And there might be a number of practical reasons for that, right? There might be tons of reasons, of valid, logical reasons. That doesn't mean that they can't be heard. And that resentment, if unchecked, is going to grow and metastasize and become damaging to your relationship. And you, as a father who is only used to prioritizing your own needs, you might grow to resent your partner for no longer being as present for you as they were before the child, because now they are devoted so wholly to their child. I don't even think that's rare. I think that can feel hurtful if you're a new dad and your partner isn't there for you in the same way that they were as you've known your entire relationship. So as long as you can sort of see those things coming, then you can sort of learn to address them, at the very least, address them and not be resentful for them. It's the lack of communication or lack of acknowledgments of those resentments that is the most damaging thing, because it grows and becomes bad. So I think, like all things, good communication about this stuff is of primary importance.
Yeah.
I wish I had more tool sets, but that's all therapy kind of stuff, and I'm not a qualified licensed therapist.
Well, I've actually had a kids therapist, come on a show too, and he's mentioned that, if you need it, you should get it, because it's important. I wonder if, we have such a high rate of divorce because people, in fact, don't talk to each other, and it boils down to where you can't stand each other anymore. Yeah. But this is... you've probably just saved thousands of marriages by saying this.
Well, I hope so. And also how important it is not to measure yourself up against what you think the ideal vision or the illusion of parenthood or partnerhood is based on Instagram. The Instagram pictures of the people you follow. That is not real life. What is real life is every single couplehood and parenthood, co-parenthood, experiences these kinds of things, and we need to be aware of that and not stigmatize them. We need to not stigmatize those issues and think that we're doing something wrong if we don't fulfill those, that illusion of perfect parenthood. Instagram is a lie. I mean, it's a beautiful lie, right? Because it's all filled with joy. Because we capture the best evidence that we can of the positive things in our lives, and we share them on Instagram. And that's why I love Instagram in ways that I never loved Twitter or anything else. It's because it's a positivity engine. It's for people to braggingly show their best selves, the best evidence they have. But that is not real life, and that is not, when you're judging your own experience of parenthood against other people's illusions of good parenthood, then you're going to be failing yourself. So that's why I'm so grateful that podcasts like this, conversations like the one you and I are having, exist, is that so we can just be public and outspoken about the fact that this shit is hard. And it mostly goes bad, and it feels real bad, and you can suddenly find yourself hating the person that you loved most in your life. You can suddenly lose your best friend. But just like I said before with production stuff and running my company, the best thing you can do is react to it quickly and respond in real time as things start to feel not so good anymore. And the worst thing you can do is just sit with it and not do anything and let it go bad. And then suddenly you're figuring out child support, right?
Well, I'm glad you guys got through this, figure it out. You know, you're going to have like super awesome, happy 2 kids. Last thing, what was probably the most joyful part about being a dad so far?
Without doubt, it's seeing my partners and my sense of humor exhibited in our kids and watching them laugh at the same shit that we think is funny. That is why everything, you know, like family jokes are so important. Like, I think my favorite times in life, absolutely without question, are sitting in bed, the 4 of us. Sometimes our dog is up there too. 14-year-old dog is up on the bed too, and the 4 of us are just like laughing at the stupidest dumb things, and the kids are dancing on the bed, and my son is like pulling his pants down, putting his butt in our face, and Lumi, our little one, is like doing a funny voice where she sounds kind of like a monster, and nobody knows why she can do this voice, and we all just crack up. And sometimes it's like first thing early in the morning, sometimes it's at the end of the night. But like when you feel that idea of a family unit all moving in the same direction and appreciating the same wonderful thing about life, which is smiling and laughing, that's when it feels like real life. That's why we're here.
That sounds amazing. Also like a mattress commercial.
It's right. You're so right. And when my clients tell me we want to recreate that emotional experience, I say, go fuck yourself. It doesn't exist.
I can see it. As you talk about it, I can see it in front of my eyes. Like there's a movie unfolding.
Yeah, you know what it is? I think when it's that real, then there's no way to capture it and sell it to people for mattresses.
Oh, man. But it sounds great, and I'm really happy to hear that it's working out for you guys. And
yeah, who knows? We'll see. We just do the best we can. That's all any of us can do, right?
But on a scale of 10, parenthood, you know,
I mean, it's everything. It's 100.
It's 100. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Look at all the applause. It's all for you.
Yeah, they liked it. No, it's
they
for
did.
You.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the one thing that I've always said, like I realized it as soon as actually we were in Portland for the first XOXO when my partner was pregnant. And it was then at the hotel in the shower that I realized how freeing it is for me to not have to be the most important person in my life anymore. That as soon as that new human comes out, that new human is the most important person in my life. And to be absolved of that responsibility of thinking about myself all the time is the best thing that comes from parenthood, in my opinion.
Do you think parenting is for everyone?
Oh, I don't think I think it's for people who think they can do it. Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to say because it's like, is living for everyone? Because in a biological sense, that feels like that's like, if we have a job to do here, it's like sort of biologically that, right? I think people can choose not to be parents, and that's so completely, perfectly okay. And I think that if you're someone who believes that you're not going to be able to prioritize your children above yourself, or that that's going to suck, or it's going to ruin your life, then you probably shouldn't be a parent. I think a lot of times what happens, though, is even if you think that you're not going to be able to, somehow it just works out that you surprise yourself, and you are able to. You are able to actually prioritize that person more than yourself.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Rad Dad Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends. Facebook, Twitter, email, Slack, wherever you are. Every time you share this podcast with your friends, it helps me to keep going. Also, if you want to suggest a guest or a topic that I should bring on the show, please go to raddadshow.com and let me know. I hope to see you soon. This has been Rad Dad Show and your host, Kirill Zubovsky. Till next time.